Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Awakened Reflections. With me, I have an amazing guest, Shanila. Shanila, can you please introduce yourself into who you are and what it is that you do?
Hey friends, I'm Shanila Sattar. I'm the founder of Always Play Studios and Flow Breathwork Facilitator Training, where I train sound healers, breathwork facilitators, and I mentor aspiring healers. I'm an author of a book called Breathe, the host of a Playground podcast, which is all about self exploration, self mastery. And I'm also an aspiring DJ. I do breathwork and beats, leading somatic healing workshops with music and spirituality all blended in. Thank you for having me.
Oh, the honor is all mine. And so, with you giving your introduction in your short bio, there's a lot of different ways which I feel really excited to dive deeper into. One of those things is breath and breath work. And so, not to go too deep on my history with breathwork, but it's very limited. It's not anything at an expert level. Like I've done Wim Hof breathing exercises off and on a couple years. I've done a couple guided ones just from YouTube videos and some websites. And I read a book, Breath or Breathe by James Nestor, a while back. And my question to you is, why is breathwork so important for human beings? What's the reason behind it? What's the science or the philosophy behind it? What is breathwork?
I mean, long story short, why is it important? If you stop breathing, you would die. So that's like number one is like, okay, well, breath is the cue that gives us life, and the way that we breathe actually impacts many different things in our physiology, including our mood, including our heart rate, including the way that the chemicals in our bodies process. And long-winded version is breath work as an umbrella basically means the way that you breathe. So there's over 200 different styles of breathing, and you briefly mentioned Wim Hof. There's Dirga breathing, there's box breathing, there's this breathing, there's that breathing, and all of these different types of breathing actually do different things to your body. So certain types of breathing calm and cool your body. Certain types activate your body. Certain types make you hallucinate. Certain types help you sleep. Certain types help you ground. So breath work is an umbrella. It's like, okay, 100 million different types of breathing. And if you want 33, you can read my book. There's 33 techniques in there that are useful. But essentially, the type of work that I do in terms of how it helps people heal is I use this technique called Dirga breathing, which comes from the Vedas. Vedas are the oldest literary texts in yogic philosophy, and they outline this particular style of breathing where you're taking two breaths in and one breath out. And what happens in your physical body when you're doing something like this is that you're triggering the shit out of your nervous system. So this is not a style of breath work that you're just like, oh yeah, I'm here to like relax and like let go. It's really to truly trigger your nervous system so that you can learn how to regulate your nervous system. And essentially what that means is that most of us live our lives holding our breath. If you check right now how you're breathing, you're probably breathing just from your chest up, and like you can be like, oh shit, like I was not breathing into my stomach, but your diaphragm is actually in your belly too. So what happens for a lot of people when we're unconsciously holding our breath is that our nervous system is triggered into believing that we're in survival mode because we're suffocating, right? Like when if you're not breathing, it's holding on to a lot of carbon dioxide, and the way that you hold your breath when you're holding on to a lot of carbon dioxide, it signals to all the nerve bundles in your body that I'm actually not okay. So oftentimes when you're subconsciously, dealing with emails or stressed out or doing everyday life shit, you're not recognizing that your body is in a survival state. So even if in your mind you're like, nothing's wrong today, like I'm living my life, there's nothing, seriously wrong. I'm not really thinking about this thing or that thing, like there's no problems, but the breath is indicating I'm actually not okay to let go. So this results in anxiety, stress. Have you heard of depression? Have you heard of panic attacks? Have you heard like all the things that we kind of feel are normalized in life? It is impacted by the way that we're holding our breath. So that's known as thoracic breathing. So when you're just breathing into your chest, it's thoracic breathing. When your breath actually wants to also go into your stomach, it wants to go up to your chest, and then it also wants to exhale fully, meaning that breathing isn't just breath in, it's also letting go of the carbon dioxide. So even when you're taking deep breaths, you're just like, yeah, I'm taking a moment to breathe. You take a deep breath in, you go, you breathe into your shoulders, which literally has no lungs or diaphragms. You like breathe into your shoulders. You suck in your stomach, which doesn't fill your body up with air. It actually releases the capacity of air, which is often what you do in Wim Hof breathing. You breathe in and you suck in your stomach to consolidate the energy. Versus other styles of breath work is really to fill your body with the oxygen that it's not getting. So your body will actually resist taking in oxygen because it doesn't know how to. And anytime your body is doing anything that it doesn't know how to, it says, oh, what is this? I don't know how to do that. It's actually triggering my nervous system to unclench in a way that I'm used to clenching. So, for example, if you are somebody who holds a lot of emotions in your physical body, and the word emotion literally stands for energy in motion, emotion. So if you're somebody who consolidates your emotion, you're like, I'm trying to be a G, so I'm not trying to like show my emotions. Like vulnerability is weak, or we see a lot of like toxic masculinity of like man up. Like there's not a lot of emotional expression that helps. That holds in the stomach, it holds in the lower back, it holds in the belly. So it actually starts to feel very difficult to take deep breaths in for people who are used to holding. So over time in breathwork practices, and I say over time because it can also happen instantaneously. If you're like down to go, if you're ready to do the work and you come into the breathwork and you're like, ha, and then all of a sudden, like you're there, that is one process. But for most people, it's a period of resistance, and your body has to say, am I okay, am I okay, and then it decides yes or no. And if the answer is yes, it might go to that growth edge and see what's on the other side of that. It might explore beyond that, and then as it gets to that growth edge, is like, no, I'm just going to stay here for a little bit, I'm going to integrate, I'm going to figure out what it is that I'm releasing. So in a long-winded way, like if you weren't breathing you would die. And also the breath has so many implications on how it is that we can come back to our own self and own sense of self when we're not living in survival states. Our breath takes us out of that.
Wow, that was very powerful and very beautiful. Thank you for explaining in detail all of that. And there's so many different ways I would like to go in deeper, but one of the things that stick out is, like you said, there's over 200, I believe, different styles of breath work, and in your book you talk about 33 different ways. And some of those, and they all have a different impacts on your body and in your life. Like for the Wim Hof, breath work for me gets me kind of hallucinogenic in a way. I feel very light. Some other ones get you feeling really calm. And some of them, like some of my friends have done some breath work practices, and they really start to feel for the first time the emotions and feelings that's been suppressed in their body, that's been stored from trauma and a lot of pain in their life, when they just go into it for 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes and they start full go crying like really uh strongly, and uncovering deep embedded energies that's been suppressed in their bodies. And so uh I'm curious, do you have like a certain regimen, routine, ritual of that you do, whether daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or is it like an intuitive feeling that you get of when to do certain breathwork exercises?
Yeah, so if I had to categorize it in terms of like, oh my gosh, there's so many terms, types of breath work to pick from and choose from and when and how many, how long. Okay, that can feel really overwhelming. And there are styles that I just mentioned, like, okay, there's these 33 that are just everyday usage. And then there's the style that I'm talking about, which is the ancient style of breathing that I just mentioned, which in my methodology, I call it flow breath work, which is a practice that you're not doing every single day because of the fact that it is incredibly triggering to your nervous system. And it's also bringing up a lot of these emotions. And so it's like doing like an intense like plant medicine journey or like an intense like running a marathon every single day, like you just wouldn't do that. Like if there's recovery time that's needed. If you just ran a marathon today, like tomorrow maybe like rest or get a massage or do something different that feels nurturing, which isn't necessarily you being lazy or like not being proactive enough in your routine or whatever. It's like the rest is needed as part of that integration. So in flow breath work, it blends in energy sciences. So we're studying from wisdom traditions that really understand energy centers in the body. We're studying the physiology. We're studying the emotions and how they're held in certain parts of the body. We're studying the nervous system. We're studying the way that emotions respond to your nervous system. So there's this integrative way that flow breath work is its own unique thing. And then we're dancing and we're moving and then we're shaking and we're yawning and there's all these somatic pieces to that. Now, if I had to say, should you do that every day? The answer is no. Should you do that as it resonates with your physical body? The answer is yes. So for me, when I first started doing any kind of breath work that was this like activated style, that I went pretty much every week to a class. And there was no flow breath work. There's not all this integrative stuff, but like a breath work that is activating and what you're saying with your friends, like, yeah, they're releasing, they're crying. There's this rhythmic process of it. And it's not like a 5-minute practice. It's a rhythmic process that takes a certain amount of time to trigger your sympathetic nervous system into its survival state. Once you get to that survival state, then your body decides what it's going to do. It's either going to break through that survival state and begin to heal and regulate, or it's going to revert back and say, nope, this is stupid, this is too much, I'm going to fall asleep, I'm going to leave the practice. Whether you're not like actually leaving the physical room, you might energetically leave the practice. You're like, all right, I'm slowing down, whatever. Your body will always protect you, and your nervous system will always say, I'm not ready to go there. So that's why everybody's pace is so different. Now, a practice of breath work or breathing techniques, that's an everyday thing. Every day you can do breathing techniques versus breath work practices. They're two separate things. So having little tools in your bag that are practices that you can do while you're driving or before you're getting ready to podcast or before you're getting ready to getting ready in the morning, you're doing your face routine. You can coexist with breathing practices that just bring awareness to your body. So activated styles are like, no, you need to actually make sure that you're taking the time to have enough room for integration. And those are practices that you probably shouldn't do by yourself unless you're somebody who's done it so many times where like you can hold space for yourself. Somatic practices like flow breath work is really about like, oh, shit is going to come up and I'm going to want to panic and I need somebody to guide me through that. They're not giving me the answers, but they're saying like, oh, you feel those emotions. And maybe if I'm somebody who doesn't know that I'm feeling emotions, you're going to be with a guide that says, is your throat constricting? Does it feel tense on the side? Is there, bubble guts? Did you just think that was a fart, but it's really like emotions releasing from your stomach? There's all of these cues that while you're in survival state, you're not really paying attention to. So activation styles of breath work is really at your own pace. And sometimes people have such a profound situation where they have such a breakthrough, they don't go back and practice for a month. They don't go practice for a month and a half to 2 months because it's like, oh my gosh, I just like went into my childhood and I forgave my family and this like trauma that I've been holding in my stomach release. And like, now I'm just like learning to exist without this heaviness in my body. So I'm not going to come back. And sometimes people try to do too much. Like they get addicted to the high of like that release, that experience where like, I want to experience like forgiving my father again. It's like, no, if you did that, then you don't need to like repeatedly do that every single time. It already happened. So there can be this like addiction to healing, this addiction to breath work or like whatever modality it is that you're, working with. We see this a lot with people and plant medicine where it's like, oh my gosh, ayahuasca did this for me or this thing, that thing. And it's like, now you do it every day. So it's no longer like a tool and like a ceremony and something that's supporting you, you're almost relying on the practice, or you're relying on the substance, or you're relying on the medicine in order to like give you that hit, to give you that like awareness, and awareness of it as well. So that integration process of any kind of healing modality, and I'll speak about breath work because that's my specialty, it's to actually allow for your body to come back down from that high, to come back down and integrate, to say like, if I don't have this profound of an experience every single day, do I still like myself? Can I still manage my anxiety? Can I still manage my thoughts? Can I still manage my patterns and my rumination, my perfectionism and my procrastination? How am I relying on that versus it being a tool that helps me have awareness? Like, oh my gosh, I'm a perfectionist because I'm afraid of abandonment. I'm a perfectionist because I think that everything needs to be perfect because as a child I didn't get enough attention. And because I didn't get enough attention, I feel like I have to be valuable to everybody and to show up in a certain way. And so when you have that awareness, like perfectionism isn't the fact that you have standards. It's really coming from a place of, I don't feel like I'm good enough, because if I'm not good enough, then like people are not going to like me. And I'm afraid of being perceived, because when people actually perceive me, they're going to think, they're going to see the real me, and the real me is not cool. I like the facade. I like the version of me that I can present and curate. That's feels safer to me. And then you're going to argue like everybody's fake, and but you are too, right? And so like that is the thing that you need to integrate, to say, wow, how am I actually dealing with this abandonment? How am I actually initiating projects in my life? How am I taking on tasks or actions in my business or entrepreneurship or whatever it is that I'm doing, and having different behaviors towards those things, rather than reverting back to the awareness, that moment of awareness that felt like a really good hit to me.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from you is that since we all breathe, breath work can be accessible and probably is suggested for everyone to look into. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also it's one of these things that it's safe for kids, it's safe for adults, it's safe for pregnant people. And when you're ready to do, the deeper healing shadow work, kind of go through the muck kind of stuff, like come through and let your body actually express that. And for many people who are disconnected from their body, and what I mean by that is you're in your head a lot, like you're a very smart person, you criticize, you analyze, you're very linear, logical, like boom, 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 boom in your head, but you're disconnected from the intelligence of your physical body, the emotional intelligence. So on paper, you have high IQ, but EQ, emotional intelligence, is pretty low as well. So breathwork as a practice is many things at the same time. It's for mood, it's for energy, it's for inner healing, it's for grounding, it's for sleep, it's for trauma healing. It just depends on like what it is that you intend to use it for, and there's a technique for you to be able to find your pathway there.
So, what is your understanding of the relationship between your thinking, your mind, and also your body? Because it's like with breath work, what this does, and meditation and things like that. It's like you said, it controls and manages your nervous system, the regulation of it. Do you see as the mind and body completely different? Does one affect the other? Is there a good balance, like back and forth between the two? What's your understanding and take on that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I'm a former researcher, so when I come into this worker, I look at it and it's like, oh, like you said, what's the science? And you read the book Breathe, and he's James is a journalist who, when he wrote the book, he wrote it as a journalist. He wrote it as a person who never practiced breathwork. So I love when there is journalism information and clinical research and empirical studies, and also as a trained scientist, I would say I'm also valuing experiential science as well. And there's a lot of things in spirituality, self development, which is not measurable by modern tools of science. So there's things like energy. And when you see energy in your body, and even as researchers, we don't really know how to measure emotions. We have, we have certain types of scales or calculators where we say, like, oh, do you feel this or do you feel that? But there's temperatures that move in your body when you feel certain emotions. Like, anger is a hot emotion. Passion is a hot emotion. You also have other temperature clues like cold. cold-blooded, cold shoulder. These are avoidant emotions. You have physical parts of your body where you feel certain things, like universally, no matter what language, religion, person you are, heartache is felt at the center of your chest. Grief is felt at the center of your chest. Not your anatomical heart, which is a little left of center, but at the center of your chest, you have this pain of heartache. You have intuition, it's your stomach. You have it in your gut. You have a gut feeling. Your stomach fell into the pit of your stomach. You have butterflies in your stomach. There's all of these somatic cues that are in the physical body. So my approach in my work, and also the question that you asked, is something known as psychosomatic. Psyche meaning mind, somatic meaning body. So the connection between the mind and body. So oftentimes in healing spaces, we're doing one or the other. It's like, okay, we're only healing from the body, or we're only healing from the mind. And then there's this disconnect between like the this one or only thing, when it's not either or, it's both. And which one first, right? And it depends for each person. And especially in my line of work, I work with a lot of perfectionism. I work with a lot of overachievers and high achievers, and people with people pleasing tendencies, a lot of self criticism, self doubt. We're more so working with people who are heavy in the mind. They can analyze the shit out of everything. They can cite you all the details, da da da. But do you know how to feel anything? But do you know how to cry? Like, you're so proud that you haven't cried in 7 years. Like, that's like a badge of honor. You have shame around like experiencing vulnerability. You're such a do it yourself, like do it yourselfer, that it's really hard for you to rely on somebody or to ask for help or to feel, interdependent. You feel like you're being codependent if you ask. And there's all of these different interactions that happen. So for me, it's not one or the other, it's to say, where is the blend in that? So if we look at it physiologically, we have a bundle of nerves in our body. It's known as the vagus nerve, not like Viva Las Vegas. It's Vegas, like Vagus, vagus nerve. And basically, it's this bundle of nerves that's connected to pretty much every single organ, every single part of your body. And this is measurable science, because we can like literally take out the vagus nerve from the body and like see what it does. And the surprising thing about this set of nerves that is connected to pretty much everything in your body is that it's 80% sensory. That means that it feels first before it sends information to your brain in order to interpret it. So that is a really big, like, that's a sentence, but that's also like, you understand that you feel before you put a story to that. And many of us don't understand what it is that we're feeling, because we've never really been trained to understand the somatic cues of feelings. So when we have heat, we know we got hot-headed, right? Like, you have it in your language that you're hot-headed, or there's like in cartoons steam coming out of the ears and whatnot. Like, you understand there's heat. But when you're experiencing anger or you're getting hot-headed, are you aware that there's this physiological change that's happening? It gets sent to your brain, and then you create the story like, oh, so and so didn't text me, so and so said this and that, like it got my feelings hurt, da, da, da. You're creating the narrative around it, but the initial experience of an emotion is energy, emotion, energy in motion, right? It's in the physical body. So I can't say that science knows how to measure that, but every single wisdom tradition has talked about it. Wisdom traditions like yoga, Ayurveda, martial arts, Buddhist, Eastern philosophies, mostly like Eastern studies. And then when we come into like Western contexts, it's very much the mind. It's very much like the linear, logical, calculated, like, where's the science? Like, then we don't understand that observational science is also science, because the word science just means study by observation. And so there's the experiential part of that oftentimes is missed in the holistic healing arts. So we tend to kind of devalue one or the other, or hyper focus on one or the other. Whereas my work in flow breathwork is to say, where's the marriage and understanding in those things?
Yeah, that is so fascinating. I never came across the term like psychosomatics, and like you talked about, you just mentioned about like the Eastern and the Western, the thinking and the more feeling, different energies and philosophies people created there. Like in the Eastern, you got like Taoism, being one with the Tao and the way, and you've got Hinduism and Buddhism and many others, which all of those, I don't know what it is about the Eastern philosophy and wisdom, but from a feeling perspective and also a thinking perspective, a lot of that seems to be the truth. It seems to feel right, feel correct. And one of those things that you mentioned as well is that your body, there is somatic cues in your body of what needs to be expressed or emoted or felt or something to work through. And like you said, the gut feeling, the butterflies in the stomach, the cold shoulders. Uh, I have an interesting question for you as to why people do this. Maybe it's a society thing that we pick up from other people from observing body language, or maybe there's something deeper. But let's say there's a speaker on stage and there's a huge crowd in the arena, and the speaker will be like, "Hey, you." And then you'll know if someone is talking directly to you. So you go, "Who? Me?" What do you have any theories as to why everyone points to like the center of their chest when they identify as "oh, me"? Because no one that I know goes, "Oh, who? Me?" Points to your head or points to your foot or points to your knuckles or elbows, but they point directly right in the middle of the chest. Do you have any theories or ideas why that is?
Yeah, I could definitely like give you my opinion of that, which in many of the wisdom traditions that I previously mentioned is that your sense of self and the seat of your soul is right at some place called your solar plexus. And it's not really at the center of your heart, it's a few inches right below, and there's some variations on where it sits in different parts of the in the body. So you're pointing to your chest, but it's also like a connection to your solar plexus. So, solar plexus is the house of your inner personal power. And many people either have a hyperactive sense of self or an underactive sense of self. So, what that means is like a hyperactive is the ego, it's the arrogancy, it's like the toxic leadership, the toxic like follow me, I'm alpha, that kind of shit. It's like that kind of energy. And then the underactive, which we see in a lot of like women typically, it's to I don't know who I am, the low self confidence, low self esteem. But in wisdom traditions, it's thought that your seat of your soul sits here. So when you're doing practices that say call back your power, call back your energy, or like even in cord cutting ceremonies or cord cutting activities and rituals and things like that, all the energy is not really coming to your head, and it's really coming into your sense of self in the center of your body.
What's your take and understanding on Reiki healing? Do you think that actually works, or is that like one of those new age? It's not really new age; it's been around for thousands of years. But what's your opinion on Reiki healing?
Yeah, I would say energy healing is for real, like energy is everything. And so I'm not particularly studied in Reiki. I've done intuitive energy healing my whole life, especially starting as a young child where nobody taught me this. And we were moving around energy in our body. We could see energy in our body. Nobody told us like this was this thing or that thing. We didn't study under some kind of like formula that taught us. And I'm a 13 generation mystic. So I would say that there is much of it running in my particular blood, like running in my hands, running in that. And the thing about energy healing is that there isn't one way that it happens for every single person, because energy moves differently depending on the person's body. And so energy is not just like woo 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 woo, it's also what are your emotions today? Like, are you hyperactivated in your nervous system? Are you existing in survival mode? Are there different things that you're integrating right now? So there's a lot of emotional and energetic components that are involved in moving energy. And one misconstruction about what energy healing is that we always think it's the healer or the person who's like facilitating the energy who is the one who's like the powerful one, like the one who's like, putting your hands and doing this, when really you are the one who's moving the energy in your physical body. And your belief around whether this works or not has a lot to do with the success that you see or don't see. So if you're going into any kind of practices, including breath work, including sound healing is a form of energy work, dancing is a form of energy work, music is a form of energy work. All of these different things are vibrational or vibes, right? Like when you experience vibes, it's the vibration. So certain people's bodies are more attuned to receiving the resonance of energy healing. Some people come in with a lot of skepticism, so you're already creating a block to being able to experience that or receive that. I would say that for me, a bunch of years ago, I had this like really bad back injury, right? And at this point, I wasn't really into energy work or this thing or that thing. It was very much like trust the doctors, like trust what the doctors are saying kind of situation. And so basically this back injury, which I still suffer from every now and then, like it'll inflame and whatnot, for 2 years I was like paralyzed from my on my right side for a long time, like my hands, my body, my back, this thing inflamed, da, da, da. And it's basically like a pinched nerve that is like, you can't really do anything about it. Surgery is not going to do anything about it. So I went to all these doctors to get my head adjusted and this thing, that thing, physiotherapy. And the conclusion was like, oh, okay, we're going to have to put horse tranquilizers into your spine for the rest of your life, aka give you an opiate addiction at like a very young age, right? And so I just like refuse to understand that. Like I refuse to be like, first of all, I don't want like the thickness of this needle. I'm just like not okay with that. So I'm not going to go and like put that on my regime for healing for any reason. I'm inconvenienced because I can't move, I can't do sports. I'm an athlete. I do field hockey and archery. I can't use my body in the way that I want to. So there's a lot of frustration there. So I went to acupuncture, and it was like a last resort type of thing. It's like acupuncture is like, okay. But kind of out of desperation, I went there. First session, Miss Rachel, right? And now, I'm still in touch with Rachel. She, yep, whatever she did in my back, I felt the energy collecting right at the spot of my pain. It burned so much. It was just like collecting, and then it went from the top of my head. It released from the top of my head. It released from the bottom of my head, and then I didn't have pain. And then I was like, how can I not believe something that I just experienced, right? Like there's a thing that, if it wasn't so obvious to me, and at that moment I saw colors in my body. That's the first time I saw chakras in my body, energy centers. I saw the spin, I saw the light, I saw the thing moving through my arms. And like, oh, okay, I came here not being able to move, and now I can move. So how can I deny something that is like factual in my book of evidence, right? And so through work like that, and since then I still go to acupuncture to like maintain that, but acupuncture is still like a form of energy healing. So I don't know so much about the Reiki um tech technicalities of like the practice of it, but as a umbrella of Reiki falling under the umbrella of energy healing, absolutely down for that. Oh, it was way before. Yeah, this is like way before I had any hands in like any kind of modalities. I was working as doing research and looking at what keeps girls interested in math and sciences, looking at perfectionism and health outcomes and things like that. I was not in the healing arts in any kind of way, but knowing that the way that I experience my own physical healing journey, like there's an emotional and like energetic spiritual healing journey, but like my physical healing journey, the way that I've personally been discounted in modern medical places and not listened to, and just like having my body's intelligence being ignored, that's a very big catalyst to why I'm in the work that I am in.
So, what has been the reason of your journey of getting to where you are now? Because it's like I kind of see through things through a spectrum. I kind of take it from Tony Robbins, where it's like people change or they do things differently somewhere along the scale of inspiration and desperation. Like they see someone or they get inspired by someone to go down a path of work or purpose, or through desperation where life something happens to you really drastically that you're like, oh shit, I need to change. So I need to find the answer to help the situation or help me out here. So it's like, what, since you also say that you come from a generation, 13th generation of mystics, which is, that's like the coolest identity ever, title. So it's like, what has been your journey that led you to breathwork specifically and to get into this line of career jobs? What has been a journey for you to lead you up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we were talking about before we hit record around like your journey too, It's this idea of like, okay, I feel misaligned. And, sometimes you can't pinpoint what type of misalignment is, because I wouldn't say that I had this like, totally disappointing life and whatnot. I can't point it and be like, oh yeah, it was rock bottom and I had to do this and that. I'm an immigrant from Bangladesh. I moved to the United States. I did my education. I have a loving family, and so there's nothing that's like this immediate thing. But what I really discovered about myself is total misalignment of what work I was doing. And I found myself like having panic attacks, which was like super new. And then I was fainting, and then my hair was falling out, and all of these like weird physiological symptoms that I was experiencing. And it leads back to when I talked about, the medical system. When you're a young woman going into like into anything that you're complaining about that is not measurable, they're like, we should put you on birth control. Like, is this moods? Is this hormones? Is this estrogen? You're like, the solution in a disgusting, alarming rate is like, here's some birth control of all things, or here's this like, a prescription for not really treating the root of what's going on, but the symptoms of what's happening. So I've always been down to like care for myself enough, and it became very abundantly clear that every day when I'm going to work, I don't enjoy it, or I don't like it. I don't like the system of the way that academia is set up. That's where I was before. I don't like the system of academia set up. I don't like the colonialism in it, or the imperialism in it, or the hoity-toity in it. It like really negates people's lived experiences, and it's also negating my real life lived experiences, where I'm saying like, this is theory and this is life, and there's like a balance between that, and it does not match there. So I basically made the decision, and at that point, because I was going through so much like turmoil, my emotions were also very up and down all the time. I was finding mood swings, insomnia, a lot of like emotional inner world turmoil, where I just felt like, why am I here? Like, what is my purpose? Like, like, am I supposed to just be in this like routine thing where I have no inspiration about something, or I don't care about something, or like I know that I enjoy life, and I want to experience life, but I'm just not figuring out like in what path I'm supposed to, quote unquote, like supposed to do that. And so at that time, I was living in Los Angeles, and I started to go to all these different sound baths, sound healing sessions with who ended up being one of my mentors in sound healing. And when I said like 13th generation mystic, I'm also a fourth generation sound healer, but not in this format, in a different format. So sound healing is basically crystal quartz singing bowls that are tuned to certain frequencies that help your brain get into a deep theta state. And you can get into theta state in many ways, including breath work, including meditation, including running when they say runner's high, anything that gets you into a flow state, the state where you are conscious, but you're also like out there somewhere. You're in this outer realm. So I ended up going to all these sound baths, and I quit my job, and then 2 weeks I was doing this full time, and it's been 10 years since that, or 10 years or so since that. And it's just trusting one thing after the other. It's not like, oh, I knew that I was going to be running a breathwork school, or I knew that I was going to train hundreds, and thousands of healing arts practitioners, and put programs all over the city with blending in holistic healing arts and clinical populations, like women's shelters and veterans legions and low income schools and places that don't like really do healing work, and like be able to implement those things. And my journey through being in the healing arts is to actually return back to my science hat, because when you're like running away from something, you think like, oh, that's my past, that's not something that like is useful to me because I don't do this as a job, when those skill sets are transferred in many of the things that I've been able to do, especially when I reclaim my identity as a researcher. Part of why I'm able to get grants in this way is because I know how to do academic writing. I wouldn't know how to do that if I was just like, oh, that is such my past. It's like transferable skills. So long story short is my own need to give a shit about myself is what led me into this work. And it also is what continues to drive me. And I think as people who identify as healers or wellness practitioners, they're often like really projecting like, oh, I just want to help people. I don't think I want to help people as much as I want to help myself. I want to help myself be in my gifts. I want to be in my truth, and that radiates into how I'm able to help myself. So if I can't give a shit about myself, if I can't care about me, if I don't see myself in my own growth and evolution, and earlier I introduced and I'm like, yeah, I'm also an aspiring DJ. I am a DJ. I just played at a festival. I'm inspiring to blend breathwork in dance classes, in dance events, and I want to blend like spirituality in and healing and movement and dancing, and make it a party. And like for all the ravers who like go to festivals, but like don't have to go to festivals to experience that. Like we're not hanging out at the bars. We don't want to enjoy music only at bars. We want to have these spaces. So it's this evolution of like next one step after the other to say, who am I right now in this season? And how does my gift and how does my strength want to come through me and manifest through me right now? And there is a fear to let go of like something that you just built and like you have an attachment to. It's like, oh, I just did the sound healing thing, or I just did this breathwork thing, or I just did, whatever it is that I did. But if you have that attachment, that's your nervous system in fear. So your breath work actually lets you unclench that to say you're going to be okay. But if you don't let go and if you don't surrender to the process, part of why flow breath work is called flow breath work is to actually flow through the ups and downs that you're going to experience, including the hardships, including the challenges. But when you're going towards something that you actually passionately care about, the challenges are nothing. It's just like, it's just not that deep. It's not that hard. Kind of like working 10 hours somewhere you don't like versus working 10 hours on something that you really like. These hours pass differently. Time feels differently. So to circle back around, it's like, yeah, as much as I like to help people, it's like I really care about myself enough to see myself in my gifts and the things that I want to do and explore and experience life as a playground. That is what that is what inspires me to show up for other people in the work that I do too.
Yeah, lovely. One of those words that you keep bringing up throughout this interview is the word flow. And from a philosophical lens, how do you suggest living your day to day life or your life in just in general through flow? Like, do you believe that you should be living in flow uh, all day long, only during your workspace, or when needed? It's like, what's your relationship between living in flow? It's like some philosophies see flow as the perfect balance, the dance between being and doing, as wisdom and love, the masculine and the feminine energies. What's your suggestion on the I would say it's like how long? Like, do you think we should be in flow at all times from when we wake up to when we go to sleep?
I think it's possible. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, I do think it's possible, but I don't think I've personally ever experienced it. And it's kind of what you said about you when we were talking before. Again, like before we hit record, you were saying like, yeah, all of these different things are kind of saying the same thing. And so if I approach it from a philosophical place, it actually says the same thing when I approach it from a physiological space and when I approach it from a nervous system space. And basically, what it says that anything that is outside of yourself. So in nervous system language, it's if you're overactivated, hyper aroused, you're doing too much. Like you're in survival mode, which is about trying to prove your worth, trying to prove your value, trying to overdo, to hustle, to burn out. And anything that is under yourself, also dysregulated, is a hypoarousal. So nervous system language, it says you're in free state, you are in shutdown mode. This is where a lot of depressive energy is also at, where you're shut down. So flow in nervous system language is in the center. Okay, so again, in nervous system language, it's known as the window of tolerance. So your window of tolerance isn't just this one line, it's like a range of a line. So there is this like little space. Instead of going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, you're still bouncing, but within a thing that is like healthy. So you're not like not feeling happy, but it's not just like everything has such a meaning. And then tomorrow you're fully depressed because you experienced such a rush of adrenaline and serotonin and dopamine, and it was so amazing. And then tomorrow you're depressed because you're chemically depleted. So should you not experience happiness? No, you should, but it just doesn't, the highs just don't feel as dramatic and it doesn't feel as low when you're on that crash. So your baseline can actually change. So if this is your baseline, and this is the highest part of your happiness that you can feel, your baseline can change so that your natural state is just like a little bit up here. Doesn't mean that you don't go down. You do go down, but the down isn't like down here as it used to be. Your baseline has changed. Okay, so that's in nervous system speak. But if we talk about energy, if we talk about chakras, it says the same thing. It says, do you have certain parts of your body that are overactive or underactive? So an example that we brought up today in our call is about the solar plexus. When you say, when you point to yourself, an example, I said, yeah, overactive is the ego, is when you're acting from, you know, leadership that is not really leadership. It's about arrogance. It's about like trying to prove something, like getting people to follow you and getting, you know, trying to prove something about yourself. That's an overactive energy center. Now, underactive, on the other hand, is like you don't give a shit about yourself at all. So there's somewhere in the middle where there's like healthy ego, there's also like healthy humbleness, there's healthy humility, there's healthy, like healthy process like that. Whereas this is like super ego, and then the below that is the imposter syndrome, like you feel like you can't do anything. So there's somewhere in the middle where you dance between those things. Now all of those energy centers have a different story. So the solar plexus is that one, your heart is a different story, your third eye is a different story. All of those things, will take 45 hours to talk about. But essentially, the chakra system, the energy sciences of Eastern traditions say the same thing. It's like, yeah, if you're overactivated, you'll need to learn how to come to the center. If you're underactivated, you want to learn how to come up to the center. Okay. So, in that sense, it is a possible thing that you navigate within this flow state throughout your day. And part of why you hear a lot of people who regularly meditate, they don't really set aside time to meditate anymore. They're not like, here's my 20 minutes or here's my 1 hour. They're meditating throughout their day. So when they're preparing their tea, that's a meditation. When they're brushing their hair, this is a meditation. It's not like a rush, like I'm trying to get out. It could be that way. And if you're brushing your hair is not a meditation, then it doesn't have to be, but it could be, like it could be just like, it's going to take me the same amount of time to panic to brush my hair, because if this is an activity that I'm doing either way, I could just do it like in a calmer manner, because it's still going to take me this amount of time. Right? Like the time is not more or less because I'm panicking through it. So it's like meeting yourself in the moment, meeting yourself in this mindful moment. That is the flow state. So you see a lot of people who are in creative endeavors, that are artists, who are talking, who are speakers, who are motivators, who are musicians. They're naturally in tune to being in this moment where they don't really remember what happened. They were awake, they were here, they were present, and it just fully channeled through. Because when you're in your overactive states, your body energetically doesn't have the opportunity to channel in the way that it wants to. And when you're underactivated, it really does not have the opportunity to channel the way that it wants to. But when you're in your flow state, it's like, oh, ideas. When the idea comes, I don't panic about it. Like, oh no, I'm not good enough to do this idea. Or like, oh no, how am I supposed to do it? You don't go into that kind of like manic state of like making it impossible before you even had the chance to just like let the idea sit, because your body begins to panic. So when you get the hit, when you get the idea, when you get the download, when you get the ancestral message, when you get the aha moments, it's like, I don't need to act upon it right at this second, because I can sit with it, let it flow with it, and then I take the reasonable action towards the thing that makes me be in flow, so that I'm not forcing stuff to happen. I'm allowing it to flow.
It really seems to me that your nervous system regulation and flow really is like the cheat code, the secret to living life. Seems pretty simple. It's like, okay, if you understand how to do all this stuff, it's like you can really bend or control or manage reality to the exact way that you'd like to. Because it all comes back down to your thoughts and feelings. And here's an interesting question I have. So, how much of this through the sound healing or energy healing and breath work, how much of it, how much of the benefits that come from it are from like the placebo effect, from actually believing in the thing? Like, have you had, which I'm sure you have, but I still don't know. So it's like, have you had like full blown skeptics come into this and not really want to do it? That's just like completely against the believing of it, and like them just at least going through the exercises or through the techniques or tools, does like the science and the physiology just overshadow or overturn like your belief system around it? Or it's like, how much of belief is needed in order for this to fully take effect into healing or whatever the intention is of it?
I mean, I'm always down for a placebo effect, because if it works, then like, ruin a good thing, you know? And if somebody comes into, for example, a sound bath or a breath work, and they are just like really sold on the science because they did their prior research and et cetera, and if that helps you be more open to the experience, then okay, cool, you know? And then a lot of people come in with actually a lot of religious programming, because sometimes like they think breathing is a like a demonic situation, and there's all these like woo woo shit that's happening here. There's a little colonialism that's happening that, you know, disregards indigenous practices as woo woo because it's not under the lens of modern science. So there's some of that, you know, interaction that's coming through as well. But I feel that my role as a teacher, a facilitator, is, do I personally believe in it? And am I doing this in good faith? Like, is this a scam in my eyes? Like, am I scamming you to be like, ooh, this marker is healing you? And then like, you know, and trying to sell you snake oil in that way, versus do I know that it has worked for me? Do I have evidence of a decade of work that it has helped thousands of people with so much that was not measured prior to me working with them? So do I have the research for X, Y, and Z? Many of it, no. You know, the modern world's not going to catch up for a long time to be able to research some of the things that we are not able to research. Like, how do I tell you your solar plexus is overactive or underactive? You know what I mean? It's like, how do you even say that in psychology as a soft science? How do you even say that, right? Like, there's like layers of that. So for me, my integration of myself as a practice, which is something when I first started in this holistic healing arts arena, I also felt that I had to like over explain the science and over explain this and that, da da da. And it's like, no, if the sounds worked, then it's good. You know, it's kind of just like music. Do I have to explain to you that this music is good or not? If you like it, then you do. And if you don't, then it sucks. Like, and your opinion is valid either way. Like, if you didn't like the song, then the song's not good. And if you like the song, then the song is good. It's like, it's preference for that. So I do think that there is like an openness that definitely supports you and helps you. And then there's also like a willingness. So even if you believe something, but there's something in your life that you're really not wanting to explore right now because you know it's going to open up a can of worms, and like you're going to have to go through some shit, you know, like you're going to have to face some stuff about your parents or about your family, about your relationship, or about your toxicity of the way that you move through life. If you're not ready to face it, then breathwork doesn't work, you know? But when people come to something like flow breathwork, they're primed to want to heal. They're primed to want to experience that. So perhaps the placebo opens up the ability to receive that, and then whatever happens for them in that experience is really through the course of their own breath, how energy moves through their own body. So I'm not in the business of like convincing you and telling you it works. It's like, if it does, then it does, then if it doesn't, then it didn't.
Before I ask my last final big question, where can people go to help support you, contact you, find more about you and your work? Where would you like to send the audience to help find you more?
Yeah, head to www.alwaysplay.org, and there's so many different things you can explore there. You can listen to my podcast, you can take courses in the healing arts, you can train as a sound healer or a breathwork facilitator. If you like mentorship, there's options there as well. And something that I'll ask you to take in the website on www.alwaysplay.org is the healer archetype quiz. So if you're somebody who's wanting to explore the healing arts and you're like, I don't know what I should study or which way I want to pursue my studies in the healing arts, the healer archetype test basically gives you an overview of how it is that you particularly channel your energy. Because all of us are not meant to hold one-on-one space. All of us are not big space holders. Some of us are better in certain contexts. Some of us are coaches. Some of us are nurturers. We're better at holding intimate spaces. So when you know what kind of styles are aligned for you, you can better approach the way that you show up in the healing arts, whether as a facilitator or as a participant.
And also, just so everyone understands, that quiz is free. So it's a really quick thing. It's like 10 questions long. It takes about 2 minutes to do. And yeah, that could really be a transformative uh, quiz that could really change your life and other people's lives. And so, actually, a quick question on one of those things that you mentioned. So you in your programs, you're able to certify people into the certain types of healing modalities, like you said, sound healing. Is that, can you be certified through it digitally, or does it have to be in like a physical location?
So, sound healing you can be digitally, and the introduction to sound healing doesn't require you to own instruments. So, you get to learn about the neurology, the biomechanics, the bioacoustics, the brain waves, and how sound works as a healing tool. So, that is virtual. And so is the Flow Breathwork Facilitator training. So, if you're wanting to become a certified breathwork facilitator, it's a 12-week program where you are meeting with your Flow Breathwork mentors for practice and practice pods. So you get to facilitate and also receive breath work. It is an intensive program, especially designed for therapists, coaches, healers, nurses, doulas, wellness practitioners. So folks who already have some kind of hand in the healing arts, they're the ones who are coming through to study.
Amazing. The big question, my final question is, what is something that you intuitively really feel the need that humanity needs to know from you? It's like, what is it deep down that you need to express? What's that main message? What's that thing you really need to get off your chest that you would like to share to the world?
I mean, honestly, it's like you live and you die. So what you want to do in between is like have fun, right? And my whole spiel is the world is your playground, and I think sometimes we're just so serious about what we are doing and how we're experiencing life that it really removes you from your curiosities and like the fact that you're weird and the fact that like you can make friends with each other and it doesn't have to be this like facade situation. So the more that we can live with joy and pleasure and just like play at the front of it, I think people would just be less angry and like stuck up. They would be happier, they would have more community, they would have friendships, and that's how I like to send that message.
It's awesome. It's like the fun version and the soft and fun version of saying YOLO. You know, you only live once.
Yellow.
And as the famous philosopher Drake once said, I'm here for a good time.
Not a long time.
You know it. Shanila, thank you so much for this episode. I learned a lot from breathwork. I can't wait to dive deeper into these studies, and I am making the intention now, personally, to dive deeper into your work and what you do, perhaps purchasing the book or going to do more research into courses and breathwork. And so, thank you so much for enlightening me. I trust that a lot of people that watches this interview or listens to it is also going to experience some amazing breakthroughs. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Sean, for having me.